Welcome back everyone. Today's video is going to be a little bit different because based on popular demand, today I want to talk about the differences between Chicago and Milwaukee. And let me get this out of the way first. Chicago is pretty amazing. So when you compare the two cities, what you find is they have a lot in common. You find a lot of similarities, but there's also a few things that are very different, and that's what I want to talk about today. From a Milwaukee perspective, everything in Chicago feels and looks like an amplified version of Milwaukee. Everything is bigger, taller, and just so much more. Chicago just takes everything up a couple notches, both in a good way, for example when it comes to entertainment and nightlife, and sometimes in not such a good way, for example when it comes to traffic or to paying taxes. And because of this difference in size, the two cities can offer a very different lifestyle, even though they somehow have a very similar DNA. So today I want to talk about the 5 most important lifestyle categories to see how living in Chicago compares with living in Milwaukee. The last category we're going to look at is going to be cost of living. So if you're comparing, make sure you stick around for that. And after that, as a little bonus content, we will also take a look at 3 examples of top neighborhoods to consider in Milwaukee. You might be surprised. Before we get started, full disclosure, I do live in Milwaukee and I personally know Chicago only as a pretty cool weekend getaway. But a lot of our relocation clients come from Chicago, and I'm always extremely curious as to why they have chosen to move to Milwaukee. So in addition to the numbers and statistics that I have for you today, a lot of what I'm going to share with you is based on our clients' feedback. Also, in all fairness, these types of comparisons can never be 100% accurate, because everyone's experience in a city is different based on where you live, what you do, and who you are. But we did our best to work out the main differences, and I would love to hear more about your personal experience in either city down in the comment section below. So let's get started with number 1. Milwaukee is located just about 90 miles north of Chicago. Both are on the shore of Lake Michigan and enjoy the same fantastic views on a freshwater ocean. While the climate is generally very similar, Milwaukee's slightly more northern location results in a couple fewer days over 90 in the summer and a couple extra days that are below freezing in the winter. And when you talk to people about what's the number 1 thing they don't like, the answer is always the same in both cities, and that is winter. The Chicago area is obviously a lot bigger. With over 9.6 million people, it is the 3rd largest metro area in the US, right after New York and LA. The Milwaukee metro area is a lot smaller, but with about 1.6 million people, it ranks still number 40 in the US by population. Chicago's size and economic power has created a downtown area that is absolutely stunning. There are 55 high-rise buildings inside the Chicago Loop that stand taller than 600 feet, and there are many more that are just below that mark. Milwaukee downtown has just a handful of high-rises, with a couple more under construction, but certainly no comparison. In terms of nightlife and entertainment options, Chicago dwarfs most of the cities in the US, and that most certainly includes also Milwaukee. However, Milwaukee can hold its own, and it has a very respectable food and restaurant scene that has received lately some national attention, and it is famous not only for beer brewing, but also for one of the highest concentrations of bars per capita in the entire country. The size of Chicago also comes with a few drawbacks, and longer commute times are one of them. Chicago traffic is not fun, and a lot of people will actually opt out of owning a vehicle and use public transportation instead. Just getting from your home to the freeway can severely test your patience. Parking is also often a challenge and can be quite expensive. Milwaukee traffic is relatively light in comparison. The city planners have, in my opinion, done a very good job with the freeway system. It is very easy to get around here, and parking is usually readily available, even downtown. Milwaukee is half-jokingly known as a 20-minute city because you can literally get anywhere in usually under 20 minutes. And if you need some nature time and you want to go out for a hike in a state park or spend some time on one of the many inland lakes, Milwaukee has a lot of options that are within half an hour drive, even from downtown. If you like to travel, then Chicago has an advantage. Chicago O'Hare is the third biggest airport in the US and has direct flights to currently 210 destinations in the US and around the globe. Milwaukee has a much smaller airport and offers direct flights to only 31 destinations, limited to the US, Canada, and the Caribbean, so you are much more likely to need at least one layover to get to your final destination. Personally, I often fly out of Chicago O'Hare to avoid a layover and to catch a direct flight, and that is actually not too bad. Typically, it takes me a little over an hour to drive from the Milwaukee downtown area to Chicago O'Hare. In terms of nightlife and entertainment, very few cities in the US can actually compete with Chicago. New York is an obvious contender and may still have a leg up, but a lot of people will say Chicago offers about 80% of New York, but at half the cost. This may not be entirely accurate, and I can see an argument about this, but I kind of get the idea. And if that is true, I wonder, could you also say that Milwaukee offers about 80% of Chicago, but at half the cost? I guess that's debatable, but anyway, if you really want to scratch that itch, like I said earlier, Chicago is a really fantastic weekend getaway. Albeit smaller, Milwaukee is still large enough to offer a wide variety of culture, sports, and entertainment, and you will not run out of things to do or see. People here like to have a good time, and Milwaukee is well known for its many festivals. The 2-week-long Summerfest is probably the most popular because it's the world's largest music festival with a huge lineup on multiple stages every year. If you don't know it, look it up. Fortunately for me, Milwaukee has also a surprisingly good food and restaurant scene. As mentioned before, I can personally confirm this as I'm a very dedicated foodie. You will find plenty of options, all the way from taco trucks to Michelin star restaurants and everything in between. Milwaukee has also 15 state parks and state forests right on its doorsteps. However, if you're like me and you love skiing and mountains in general, you're a little bit out of luck here with both cities, because the surrounding land is relatively flat. If you want to see some rolling hills, you will like the Driftless region, which has been spared by the glaciers, and that's located a couple of hours west of Milwaukee. Chicago's economy is huge. In fact, it is bigger than all but 20 countries in the world. 36 Fortune 500 companies have their headquarters in Chicago versus 6 in Milwaukee. The total economic output of the Chicago metro area is about $770 billion. In comparison, Milwaukee's total GDP comes in just a little over $100 billion. Chicago also offers a huge amount of job opportunities. However, if you are looking for a job, that also means there is a huge amount of competition. As of September 2022, the unemployment rate has been 4.5% in Illinois compared to 3.2% in Wisconsin. Wages are generally higher in Chicago. Average household income in Chicago is about $67,000 and in Milwaukee about $60,000, which is about a 10% difference. Both cities have a downtown area right on Lake Michigan, but Chicago is simply no comparison. Milwaukee's downtown area has seen a lot of redevelopment over the last decade, about $1.6 billion of commercial construction already invested and quite a bit more on the way. It is clearly getting a lot more modern. A great example is also the relatively new Deer District growing around the new Milwaukee Bucks basketball arena, and that is becoming a real entertainment destination. Let's talk about migration trends. Based on proximity, there is naturally a lot of exchange between the two cities. 37% of Milwaukee's inbound migration is from Chicago. On the flip side, Chicago is also a top choice for people leaving Milwaukee. 22% of them opt for Chicago. On a state level, Illinois is one of the states with the fastest population loss in the US, while Wisconsin is slowly climbing the popularity ladder. The 2022 U-Haul Migration Report ranks Wisconsin at number 13 out of 50 states, which is probably a surprise to a lot of people. According to NerdWallet, the cost of living is 21% lower in Milwaukee compared to Chicago. The biggest difference is in housing, which is 36% cheaper, and then transportation, which is 18% lower. For entertainment, you can budget about 15% less, and food is 10% lower. The median apartment rent in Milwaukee is about $1,272 compared to $2,210 in Chicago. even though rents have been going up in Milwaukee as well. The median home price in 2022 for the Milwaukee metro area has been $357,000 versus $514,000 in Chicago, which is a 43% difference. Taxes are always a hot topic in both cities. Milwaukee property taxes are not exactly low, but still better than Chicago in most cases. Sales tax is much lower in Wisconsin, only 5.6% in Milwaukee, compared to Chicago almost double at 10.25%. According to the Tax Foundation, the overall tax burden for Wisconsin is 10.9% compared to Chicago's 12.9%, which is one of the highest in the nation. I hope this gave you a little perspective about the differences and would love to hear your thoughts about either city in the comment section below. What do you like or dislike about Milwaukee or about Chicago? As promised in the beginning, I want to provide also 3 examples of great neighborhoods in Milwaukee. If you're not too familiar with Milwaukee, you might be surprised. The historic 3rd Ward used to be a commercial warehouse area and is today one of the trendiest places to live in Milwaukee. If you enjoy being close to the water, prefer a condo lifestyle, and enjoy walking to great shops and restaurants, this one is for you. Shorewood is a very interesting mix of urban and suburban neighborhoods on Milwaukee's North Shore. You will find a lot of very stately residential homes built back in the early 1900s. Shorewood offers a fair amount of nightlife and great walkability to coffee shops, all wrapped in a nice residential setting with lots of trees and green backyards, and all that just minutes away from downtown. Mequon is an example of a suburban neighborhood. Homes are generally larger, newer, and typically on large lots between 1 and 5 acres. Property taxes are low, and the commute time to downtown Milwaukee is typically around 20 to 25 minutes. I know this very well because that's where I live. So bottom line, I think both cities have a lot to offer, and in the end, I think it really comes down to personal preferences. My personal take is that I really love going down to Chicago for a weekend, but I do like the size of Milwaukee. It feels more manageable and it has everything that I would expect from a city, yet it is still small enough to get around quickly. I would love to see your thoughts on both cities in the comment section below, both positive and negative. And if you're interested to see more about Milwaukee's neighborhoods, you can find a lot of them on my YouTube channel. If you're thinking about moving to Milwaukee, check out our website onpointrg.com and download our relocation guide with a lot of info about Milwaukee, or sign up for the Milwaukee MLS Access to start looking for properties like a pro. That's all I had for you today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.